Welcome to THRIVEcast, a production of the Flint Center for Educational Excellence. My name is Dawn Hibbard, and I will be your host. Our topic today is March is Reading Month. I have with me in the studio Dr. Nina Hasty, Director of the Networked Improvement Communities and Initiative of the Flint Center for Educational Excellence. Welcome, Dr. Hasty.
Thank you.
Now, March is Reading Month, and I wanted to talk with you about why early grade reading skills are important for future academic success, and also have you tell us about the network's work and what it is doing to help improve third grade reading scores at participating network schools. So let's start with the importance of early grade reading skills. Why is it important that children develop reading skills by grade 3?
So we all know that by grade 3, if the students don't have foundational skills needed, their success rate is more challenging to become a successful reader. And when I say reader, I just don't mean decoding, it's comprehension as well. And so we're looking at in the early stages when a child learns to speak and identify objects, they are also beginning to understand letters and sounds and how those phonemes is what we call them, how they are put together to produce a word that then they can hear, identify, look at objects and say, that's a boat. And then you are then able to dissect the O and the A. So those skills, then we put that together with them understanding and putting those words together in a sentence and that sentence to make sense. And that's where they get that comprehension from. And so early on, if we are having students not being able to recognize objects, to put words in a sentence and it semantically so that it grammatically makes sense to them for their understanding, as they get older and they venture into kindergarten, preschool, and the teacher is going over the phonological awareness, which is your phonemes, your segmenting, being able to then manipulate sounds with rhyming, and it sort of puts the students at a disadvantage. So as we are going through the learning process of early intervention, early detection or with the parents at home, when we're going through having your child to be able to identify words, they are also beginning to identify sounds. And again, putting those phonemes together to make sense of the sounds that they hear, which is the alphabet. And if they don't have that when they enter into preschool and their vocabulary is limited, then it's going to damper or give them additional challenges to be able to then put words together on paper, hearing to make sense of the communication part. And so I'm going to step back and give you the components of reading. So it's not only the phonics part, it's also the oral part, and it's the comprehension part. And so all those three things together equals reading and that fluency. So if the students are not able to identify objects, they're not being able to then take the pictures and identify what this word is with this picture as they're beginning to read, that hinders their fluency. Therefore, the comprehension is challenged because now they have to think, they have to stop. And by the time they get to the third word in a sentence, they've forgotten what the two words are prior to. So by the time they get to the end of the sentence, they've forgotten what the sentence was. Therefore, it hinders their comprehension. So all of these things play a part. So we don't want students to wait until they enter school to start identifying objects before parents are saying, okay, that's the kitchen. Okay, what sound, what letters do you hear? Or the alphabet. And I know a lot of parents say, well, my child knows the alphabet. Well, out of order. They need to know those letters out of order. They need to be able to identify out of order, out of sequence. They need to be able to identify that cat. There's a C, there's an A, and a T. All those phonemes together make the word cat. There's a picture of the cat. You got to identify the cat. Now, can you put cat in a sentence? I saw a cat walk down the street yesterday. And be able to then ask simple questions. Well, what do you think the cat is going to do once they get to the end of the street? Well, why do you think the cat walked down the street? So now you're bringing in comprehension strategies for that child to have critical thinking skills. So all of that should happen before they even get to preschool. And if it doesn't happen and the vocabulary isn't there, then that's even more challenging, because now we have to build that vocabulary bank up, versus many students come in with the vocabulary, usually in our setting, maybe of 5,000 to 7,000 words. Versus other settings, they come with 20,000, 30,000 vocabulary words in their word bank. And that makes a difference when they're reading and identifying.
So if a child comes into one of the network schools and they have that smaller bank of vocabulary words, what tools is the network? Well, I'm thinking maybe we should back up and talk about what our network does. So we'll talk about the tools in just a second. So the network improvement communities, what is that?
So that is where we have 8 schools within our network, and we have teachers within the network working on the PDSA cycle, which is Plan, Do, Study, Act cycle. And we provide them with multiple change ideals in reading and math. And so they look at their data and figure out which change ideal, which is a strategy, but it's been proven to work with any curriculum. Which change ideal do I want to focus on that's going to support my students academically? And so we have a lot of schools who do letter sound correspondence. And that's that phonological awareness. It's being able to identify the letter, identify the sound, singular, and then move to multiple, where you have your blends. And so now the students are able to identify the letter, the sound, to be able to then put those sounds together to create a word. And the teacher then works on that fluency aspect. But you can't work on the fluency aspect if the student can't read, if they can't identify, if they can't blend, which equals decoding, for them to get to that fluency, which equals comprehension. So that's one of the biggest change ideals that a lot of the schools in the network are utilizing. And we're actually seeing changes. And a lot of those students in those classrooms are actually in Reading Rangers, which we support as well. And Reading Rangers is the foundational skills. They build those foundational skills that I was talking about. Identifying letters, identifying sounds, and then put those sounds together to be able to then blend, decode, and then read those words in context. So then we pull out UFly, which is something that a lot of the school districts use. It's a reading supplemental program. And what happens is those students see those letters and sounds in context, and there's like, okay, so we worked on E, we worked on T, we worked on W, S, and L. So now I'm beginning to say, okay, now there's a reading component that blends all of those letters and sounds together, and now students are able to identify sounds, to be able to blend to the code, and then fluently read that sentence, and then questions are asked to build up those comprehension strategies. But not only that, then you're looking at the different genres that the students are reading in, which requires different skill set for them to be able to comprehend that text, because you have to look at it differently and questions have to be asked differently. And so that's what Reading Rangers does. And so that's one of the components that we really push, because we know that by the time students get to 3rd grade, if they're reading 2 grade levels behind, then the challenges are exponential. And so therefore, the students have those additional challenges. And sometimes that support looks different. Sometimes, it depending on the school district that they're in, that support is just in the classroom, and then that teacher has additional challenges to bring that child up to where they need to be. Now, I'm not saying that it's impossible, but it provides additional challenges in the classroom as well for the parents to be able to support that child, to be able to bring them up where they need to be.
Yeah. So there's a couple of thoughts I have. One of them is I have spoken with some of the educators in the network, and they talk about different tools that we actually give teachers in the classroom. Aside from the Reading Rangers program, the network has actually given teachers in the network things that they can take into the classroom. Can you talk about some of those maybe?
So within the toolkit that we provide the teachers with, there's different questions, we call them moves, different small moves that they can do, whether it's scaffolding a student's learning. So if a student is stuck, instead of moving on, we ask additional questions to really get them thinking about the text or whatever that they may be doing. So say, for instance, I asked a student, well, what do you think? We're doing an inference. And so what do you think from reading the title of this book and looking at the pictures? Well, what do you think might happen in the story? And if the student is stuck, then one of the small moves would be, okay, now you have to then ask questions that might relate to maybe a movie that they've seen, maybe within their neighborhood. So now you're bringing in text to world connections. And so that students can have some type of prior knowledge. And so you might ask, well, you said yesterday that your favorite football team were the Lions. And here we have football players here. What happens in a football game? Talk to me about a football game that you either went to or you saw on television. And so now the child is like, oh yeah, so we have the quarterback and the linebacker and they do these things and they run the ball on the 20-yard and they get a touchdown and they field goal. And say, okay, so now you know all of that information. So again, let's look at this title. Let's read this title and let's really think about the title and what you just said, because what you just said, it connects to what you're going to read. So now that child is building prior knowledge. And without prior knowledge, then the child is lost versus, oh, I understand now because I saw this, I heard this. So we have the moves that they can do. We also have additional academic formats for them, supplementals, so like the U-Fly. And so they can click on a link and then stories come up for the students versus them searching for a story that correlates with their letter sound correspondence. So that's there for them. As well as we have instructional coaches that are assigned to the network teachers to support those teachers with understanding if it's math, how to utilize the manipulatives that you have in your district to support students on tasks or within the content area. We have them to be able to really, and it's a small group of teachers that they work with. So therefore, that instructional coach can really zone in on what it is that that teacher is doing well to continue, as well as some areas of opportunity of growth to support them. They go in there and model. I've gone into a couple of schools and modeled, what does this look like? What do you need from me? Let me show you what maybe letter sound correspondence look like, the reading of science and the different strategies that they have. What does that look like? So you can get, the best that you can possibly get from your students to implement this instruction. We also have the grant that gives them ample opportunity for them to provide human capital as well as the materials needed. So many schools have purchased manipulatives. They've purchased supplemental, like FCCA, they've purchased supplemental or new curriculum that they have researched and found that this curriculum is better than the other curriculum that we've been using. And so, but I think the biggest thing that the network provides is that human capital in the classroom supporting those teachers, because that's what is needed for them to hone in on their strategies and skills to become a better educator.
Now, the network actually convenes teachers. Was it 4 times a year?
It's 5 times a year.
5 times a year, okay.
And so we have instructional coaches come in first, and then we talk about their trials, their data. How did the data connect to what you're seeing in your building within your, maybe your NWEA, your iReady scores, or your, I call it authentic assessment that your teachers are doing, your formative assessment, your summative assessment. Is that aligning? And if not, what small moves did you do as a coach? Just say, okay, so your students, the letter sound correspondence, looking at that first trial, I see that you might have had 62% proficiency when you did your progress monitoring within this trial. And so what small moves did you do as an instructional coach to support those teachers to bring that score up? Because again, if we see that students are not doing well, especially letter sound correspondence, because that's the foundational skills there, then what is it that you're doing? What support can we give you additionally to support those teachers? We have some great certified and non-certified teachers, so maybe their skill set is not where it could be. And so what small moves are you doing? Differentiated instruction, do they understand that? Or there's some webinars they can watch that you can watch and then bring it to your network teachers and then have a discussion about that. Going into the classroom, helping them planning and helping them implement those strategies that maybe they've learned for a webinar or a conference. We bring them in and we really hone in on that data. What is the data telling you? And then what was your next move with that data? What do those conversations conversations look like? Because what we don't want is to be evaluators. So it's always a non-evaluative type. So talk to me about what you're doing in your class, in your teacher's classroom. Did you see that it worked? And if you see that it did not work, what was your next move? Then the other questions is, how can I support you? And in what aspect can I either come out in your building to support you, to support the teachers, or just go into the building and support those teachers? And so then we come back later on that evening and all the network schools are there. So it's over 100 teachers and administrators. We come together, and sometimes, depending on the data, we'll pair them with like schools, or we'll pair them with a school that has the same change ideal. We'll pair them with a school that they really understand what they're doing. We'll pair the other schools and we'll support them even more in that space. But it's a great space for them to talk about what they're doing, to listen to what other schools are doing, to get suggestions from those other schools. And then the leaders come together and they talk about their change ideal, which is the chronic absenteeism, and what strategy they're implementing and what are those numbers looking like. Is your absenteeism rate lower for this cycle than it was for the first cycle? And if so, they meet in a room and, okay, what did you do that you can share with another school? And then it's like, oh, we didn't try that. Or they bring in, oh, we do this flyer, and then we share not only our resources verbally, but if we have materials. And we like for them to do that, and versus the network to say, here's some things. We want them to be able to come up with their own ideas that's working for their population, and then talk to other principals, have the same population that they do, and say, okay, these are some things that is working for my school. We're sharing.
It's like professional networking for teachers and administrators.
Yes, and I like it because it's some are within the same district, like the Flint School District, and then you have those Carmen Ainsworth, and then you have Beecher, and so you have all of these school districts and schools, the charter schools that are supporting Flint students that are coming together from across town, trying to figure out how we can best support our parents, to get the students in the schools so that our teachers can be more successful because the students are there in front of them, and how we can support the teachers in their space. And whatever that space looks like, we support them in that space.
So it really is, I'm trying to describe it with the right word, but it really is getting people in, like you say, across school districts to come together, all supporting our students and families, no matter what school district they're going to. So these are all our Flint kids.
Absolutely.
That's amazing. You talked about the Reading Rangers, and I know that we did the pilot program, and we've done round 2. And I just saw the report for that, and the results look really good.
So we have some great teachers that are the facilitators within Reading Rangers. So we were able to get additional schools on board. So out of the 8 network schools, we have 6 schools that are supporting students in that Reading Ranger space. And so, again, it's systematic. And so we do our assessments first to figure out, of course, where are the students. And then teachers would then have a plethora of materials within the units. And so we figure out, okay, so you have grade 2, but your students might be working in grade 1. Let's look at these 4 units. Where do you need to start? We have teachers in there still doing differentiated instruction. We have RAS kids that we also pull in, which is a great support tool that the parents actually get the login for the whole year for the child to be able to listen to books on tape and then read at their instructional level, and then build them up to grade level. And some go beyond grade level. I was in a classroom and she had 2nd graders, but this student was reading at 3rd grade level. And so I'm like, okay, so now let's look, and we have to plan accordingly because we want to continue to push this child upward. We don't want to stagnate them. And so the teachers do a great job with differentiated instruction in that small group. And so we are able to bring in RAS kids. We're able to then look at all of these units and lessons and figure out where do we start, and then we progress monitor. And so we come together for our PLCs once every 3 weeks after we progress monitor. So we just started round 2 of progress monitoring because we don't want to get to the end to figure out where the students are. And so as we're progress monitoring, we're getting this data, we're coming together and we're like, okay, and we're using the PDSA cycle for that. Okay, now where do we go? What do we do? Okay, so I think maybe you need to move up a unit within grade 1. I think maybe you should move up with these 3 kids to grade 3, even though they're in 2nd grade. And so what does your planning look like? So we do planning, and we support them in that space, as well as with the resources that we have and that they have within the Reading Rangers portal. And so those teachers are in there. And when I tell you they're pulling, sometimes they pull their own resources. They're like, I did this today in class. This would be better. And as an educator, they know what it is that they need to do for those students. And so we're definitely looking to see better numbers at the end of May for these students. And it was a longer time period as well. And so that gets the teachers with those students for 12 weeks of instruction, 2 times a week versus it was 8 weeks prior to. And so we're looking to see some great things. And we're looking for the parents to come out to parent workshops. Those have been doing great, where we actually sit down and we do a lesson. Same lesson we would do with the students. And we give them tools and we give them questions to be able to then say, okay, parent, here's some books. And they get 9 books throughout that 12 weeks they're choosing. And to be able to take those books, and they're actually doing it in the workshops. And the teachers are facilitating to ensure that the parents understand these strategies and that they're doing them in this space first, so that they know that they have that confidence to be able to do it at home.
So the parents are being brought in as partners.
Yes, yes, they are. 3 times within the 12 weeks, they come in, and we've gotten great feedback from parents. If a parent can't make it, we do virtual meetings. If a parent can't make the virtual, then these teachers are stopping them saying, I need 15 minutes. Let me just go over the gist of the workshop, and here's how I'm supporting you. We have a parent communication portal, and so we're sending out, don't forget to have your child to read. Don't forget to put them on RAS Kids. Don't forget that when you're cooking, just talk to them about the ingredients and reading the ingredients and grocery shopping and get your list together. So we're giving little tidbits of things that they can do within their busy schedule to support their child within reading.
Well, and I think the results are astounding, because I looked at the chart for the last set of data, and it showed that there were a number of children that moved up a grade reading level, but almost all of the children I think all of the children in the program moved up in reading skills. They may not have gone to the next grade, but they had advanced in skills.
So again, those skills are the most important things that it's not really moving them up a grade, because as long as they have those skills and understand how to utilize those skills, that's going to move them up. And so everyone moved up within the band. And of course, we always think of it like at the stoplight. So we have that red, yellow, and the green. And so the students, even within that red, we saw that red decreasing because those skill sets increase. So now we see students who have the understanding of letter sound correspondence to be able to then blend, to be able to then decode, to then be able to put those words in a sentence, to be able to read fluently. And so that's our goal. And so we know that that's step 1. And then step 2, we build in that comprehension. So now let's look at those letter sound correspondence that we worked within, and then put that within the words to build that sentence and ask questions. And so the students are doing a marvelous job. And even those students whose skill set is still not where we want it to be, they're listening to their counterparts, and then they're catching on. And it's a friendly competition with a lot of the students when I go in and visit the sites. And so that's great to see that they're all willing and they want to be there. And I think that is what pushes their skill set up, because they try. They know that this is something that they need, that they are going to become a reader for life with these skills that they're learning.
Yeah, it's, and it's so important, because the old adage is that, up until grade 3, you're learning to read, and then from grade 3 on, you're reading to learn. And I think that's why we've put so much emphasis on this, and why it's so important, the work you and the network are doing.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, I just encourage parents to even if it's just riding in a car and they're asking their child, what is that? And then be able to say the object of what that is. And then to be able to say even the beginning of the initial sound. What sounds do you hear? Going through the alphabet out of sequential order, and then putting on Sesame Street or some type of program, PBS program, that they're teaching the sounds to, because we're learning that parents, sometimes they're not as confident as they should be, because they might not think that they know this. I'm not a teacher. Well, yes, you are. You are your child's first teacher. And again, even if it's driving in the car, going to the grocery store, sitting down with your child, making up the grocery list and saying, okay, P's, what letter do you hear? The first sound, P. Okay, well, let's go find the aisle where they have the P's, and the child is able to identify that those are P's, and, strawberries, and what does strawberry start with. And so all of those things, even if parents don't think that makes a difference, it makes a huge difference when the child enters into preschool and kindergarten, with, again, their vocabulary having a bank of more than 5,000 vocabulary words. Even if you Google, I always tell the parents, you can Google and say, well, what's another word for quiet? What's another word for fast? And even if they don't know, we have Siri, ask Siri. And again, those are additional words that your child knows to be able to then be able to identify. Read fluently builds comprehension skills.
So we can use the technology for good.
Absolutely.
Well, it has been a pleasure talking to you today. I want to thank you for a great conversation about the importance of early grade reading scores as we march into Reading Month. You have been listening to THRIVEcast, the podcast program of the Flint Center for Educational Excellence.